Good evening. I hope you can all hear me. I'm sorry, I'm probably a minute or so late. I had a couple of technical issues with logging in and getting the camera to go live. I've had to change to a different browser, but hopefully you can all hear and see me. And thank you for inviting me to join you this evening to talk about how we can manage our anxiety, particularly at these difficult times that we are living in. I'm hoping somebody's going to put up a comment if there's any problem with the sound or the screen at all, and I will keep an eye on the comments in the live chat to see if there's any comments about not being able to hear me or see me clearly. So thank you, Emma, for inviting me to talk to your group for this evening on this topic, and it's a reciprocal event, really. Emma very kindly spoke on one of our webinars back in March or April, fairly soon after the lockdown, when we put together a series of webinars offering people advice about how to deal with anxiety and the stress and the worry of the coronavirus and the pandemic at the start of the lockdown period. And it's strange that here we are almost 6 months later and we're still talking about it. We're still now living with this horrible pandemic, and we're now preparing to go into that yet again a phase of lockdown that could lead to another national lockdown, the way things are looking if we're not careful. And this time around, of course, we're heading into the winter months, so it's going to be even more challenging for us all to deal with, and therefore more important that you've got some tools and some resources, some ways of helping yourself to look after yourself, to take care of your well-being and help yourself through this difficult period. As I say, Emma's did one for us earlier. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm fortunately, as some of you may know, Emma's not here with us right now live because her son Elliot's enjoying his birthday today. So I hope Elliot's having a wonderful day. So let's get on with talking about what we can do then. So what I really wanted to touch on first and foremost was when we hear about, very often you'll have heard the phrase fight or flight, and often when you're put into an anxiety-provoking situation, that automatic chain of events begins. That is that fight or flight response that you may have heard mentioned in the past, and it goes back and often refers back to when we were cavemen. We would look at situations and be faced with that fear of something coming along, hunt us down, and as cavemen, we'd take our blunt instruments out and either fight that threat or we'd run away from it. More recently, this has been adapted and updated to include the freeze response, as sometimes people find themselves unable to move from the spot when faced with that anxiety stimulus. So it's fight, flight, or freeze, or fright, flight, freeze, or flop is another way people sometimes describes it, because it's the response basically that happens naturally without thinking, because it's triggered by a part of our nervous system whose job it is to control those automatic functions. Things like breathing, heart rate, they're automatic functions, and that one of those automatic functions is that instant reaction to danger. So fight, flight, or freeze are mediated through the release of adrenaline in what's called the sympathetic nervous system. And their actions either confronting or avoiding running away, or freeze comes to our old reptilian brain when staying perfectly still, including stopping breathing, and sometimes at the time would have been a more life-saving measure. So you literally just freeze and go totally as if you were not there at all. Now, the flop is the faint reaction, which is mediated by the parasympathetic nervous system via what they call the vagus nerve. Now, so you've got the parasympathetic nervous and sympathetic nervous systems working effectively in opposite to each other, and generally speaking, only one can be dominant at any one time. So, for example, say threatened by a car speeding along the road suddenly, or when you're crossing the road, there's that automatic increase in the sympathetic arousal. The blood is pushed away from the abdominal organs, moved into what we call the major skeletal muscles. The heart rate increase in the parasympathetic processes reduce or stop altogether. And when people are in a situation that causes them anxiety, their sympathetic system starts to dominate and the fight, flight, or freeze begins, also known, as I said, as the cascade of adrenaline. And this again, it happens automatically. You can't. It's not you do consciously. It's because it's triggered by the autonomic nervous system. And the job of the autonomic nervous system is to control these automated functions, that breathing, the heartbeat that we've already mentioned. Two components, as we said, parasympathetic and sympathetic systems. So when we're dealing with things like that, we need to know how to manage it, how to control it. And one of the ways you can what you want to do, obviously, is activate the parasympathetic system, because that's actually what helps you manage that situation. It acts in that opposite manner to the sympathetic system, and that's the part of the system that triggers the adrenaline cascade, which causes anxiety. So if you can manifest or trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, then that's going to help us. It's often referred to as the rest and digest part of the nervous system. When it's activated, it slows your heart rate, it helps you breathe in, slow down, and it leaves you feeling much more state of calm. So activating it is actually much more simpler than you might think, and can be achieved by a simple breathing technique that I'm just going to run through now with you. So we call it 3-4-5 breathing exercise. So what you need to do is just find somewhere quiet where you can sit in peace and hopefully not be interrupted, and practice the exercise either with your eyes closed or your eyes open. It doesn't really matter. So to begin with, just start breathing in through your nose for a count of 3. At the top of your inhale, as you get there, hold the breath for a count of 4. And whilst you're doing that, just push your tummy out. Then gently exhale through your mouth, making an O shape and a whooshing sound if you can, for a count of 5 or longer if possible. So it's in through the nose for 3, hold for 4, then out for 5. That nice O shape and breathing out a whooshing sound. Yeah, if longer breaths do sometimes they can cause anxiety themselves, then don't push yourself. The most important thing is that the exhale is longer than the inhale. And if you repeat that for at least half a dozen times, longer if you can, and see how you feel. As you're breathing in and out, you're starting that parasympathetic nervous system to take over. Your heartbeat's slowing down, your breathing's slowing down. Now, obviously, I've been quite exaggerating that for quite a bit there, to allow you to see how I was doing it. But you can do that without being quite so exaggerated, quite so obvious what you're doing. And you can find that can be really, really helpful. And I know many of you involved in the choir and working with Emma will know about breathing exercises, the importance of breathing for your singing. And so you should find those kind of breathing exercises very easy to be able to do and to be able to implement and practice. And therefore you'll be able to manage that and bring that parasympathetic nervous system down into a state of calm and relaxation, which would be really good. So that's one exercise you can do, and so you can practice it. And as long as you're not doing it quite so obviously as I was for you to help you understand it, you can do it almost anywhere. You can do it maybe sat in your car in traffic when you're getting a little bit anxious, or you're waiting to go into a meeting and you're sat out in the reception area, you're going in to see somebody, job interview, or who knows what it is. You may be going to see your doctor and feeling a bit worried, or you may be going to see somebody that you want to talk about your health, for example, you're feeling anxious, who knows. But you can do that exercise anywhere and do it without being noticed. You can still do it very relaxed, very calmly, on the train, on the bus, wherever, even in the queue in the supermarket if you're feeling a bit anxious. So do try and practice that. So that's one thing. Breathing, really calming yourself down is really important. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is another distraction technique that we often talk about. There's a few ways of doing it. Reading out loud actually is one that my chief exec often refers to. Reading out loud, particularly if you're feeling a bit panicky. If you ever do have a panic attack or feel a panic attack coming on, do try it. Just get a book and read it out loud. If you've got somewhere quiet in the house you can go to for yourself and just read that book to you. So reading it out loud. The focus and the attention that you're of carrying out that exercise of reading out loud is such a distraction. You stop worrying and thinking about other things. So that's another tip that you can maybe practice. Saying the alphabet backwards is another one that we encourage people to try. It's a good distraction technique. Simple things when you're feeling a bit panicky, feeling that sudden onrush of anxiety. So it's surprising what you can think about when you make a positive effort to stop thinking anxiously about things. So, saying the alphabet backwards, counting backwards from 100 in groups of threes. The five senses technique is another good grounding technique that we encourage people to think about. So, when you're feeling anxious, very often we start to think ahead into the future and start to experience this whole what if thoughts. What if this happens, and what if that happens, and what if and what that? Oh, and indeed, our founder Harold Fisher had a regular saying, "said What if? So what?" And that was one of his infamous quotes, and we've woven that into quite a few of our materials, and we've got that on the wall in our reception in memory of Harold. So, what if is often what we start to think when we're feeling anxious. Try and remember, so what? But one of the other things you can do is as a grounding technique to help you. And this simple exercise just helps bring you back and helps keep you in the present. Again, the end result being that you feel calm and more connected with your immediate environment. So sight is the first thing. So look around and find 5 things that you can see and say these out loud. 5 things you can see. So I look around, I can see got a plant on the windowsill over there. It's actually basil, a plant of basil that's in the kitchen window that is handy to pull off the leaves and drop into the Italian food that I'm cooking. There's a herb rack. If I look outside the window, I can see the bird feeders, I can see the trees, and I can see the bird bath. So 5 things you can see straight away, yeah? So then think about what you can hear. 4 things that you can hear, and then say them out loud. So I can hear the bathroom being flushed upstairs. Somebody else has been to the loo. I can hear the birds singing outside. I can hear the cows across the road, and I can hear the kettle boiling, for example. So 4 things that you can hear. 3 things that you can touch that close by. So I picked up my phone, a pen, and my mask, because we've all got a mask handy these days, haven't we? So 3 things that you can touch. Smell, 2 things that you can smell and say them out loud. I can smell the cup of tea that I've got in front of me. Yeah, that's good. And I've got that there in case I get a bit dry. And I can smell that basil, actually, because that basil plant, you can't see it. It's only just across the way there. And it's quite pungent. It smells lovely. So one thing that I can taste, one thing I can taste is this cup of tea. Tea. So grounding yourself, bringing yourself back into the moment, helping you feel calm and connected with the environment is because you're talking about things in your environment that you can see, hear, touch, smell, or taste. You're focusing on things immediately around you in your environment. So there's some things there that you can practice and try and consider for self-help techniques. These are simple little ways to help you manage your anxiety yourself in small, simple ways. I mean, obviously, they're great for the immediate moment. Longer term, you might need to do something else and think of other ways of helping you manage your anxiety. And there's lots of things to consider. It's not necessarily always going to be the case that you need to go see your doctor or need to have talking therapy, although that clearly could be an option depending on how you get on. But the small, starting off small and working up to that, there are small self-help techniques, such as the little exercises we've just talked about. Moving on from that, online peer support groups is a good way to get help. Meeting other people online in forums and community groups online particularly these days, obviously given the social distancing and the lack of face-to-face contact that we can have these days. There's lots and lots of online peer support groups that you can access these days. In fact, we're running our own at Anxiety UK once a week on a Wednesday evening, and it's open to members and non-members for a small fee. I think it's £2.50 or £5, depending if you're a member or not. And we have groups of about 15 to 20 people meet once a week with a facilitator to talk about how they're feeling. People share their tips and techniques with each other, support each other. Some people come back week after week. It's a drop-in session that you don't have to attend every week, and it's a good way of sharing with others who are in the same situation as yourself how you're feeling. It's good to talk to somebody, and indeed, talking to somebody is something else we really do encourage you to consider. It is okay not to be okay, but it's also okay to tell somebody that you're not feeling okay. So talking to somebody is vital. I mean, I was on a radio calling program a week or so ago, and the chap that was on the phone before me was telling him his own personal experience, and he was saying how much it helped him talking to his wife, who thankfully was very understanding and supportive because she worked in the NHS and she had a background in mental health support, so she totally understood and got it. But what really stood out for me was what he said about it wasn't just that she understood it from a professional point of view, but she was there for me and she was my rock and she is my rock. And I think that's vitally important. One of the problems this whole lockdown in particular has created is a lot of isolation. We're not in touch with our friends and our family, our normal support networks. So, keeping in touch with people, talking to people, and keeping those support networks open and flowing is really important. It's very easy to perceive that you can't have those conversations, you can't keep those networks going, but you can if the tools that we use, the WhatsApps, the Zoom meetings, the team meetings, whatever it is, whatever tools you use, the technology, the FaceTime talks, it does help us keep in touch with people. I know in the first phase of the lockdown, April and into May, my wife and I were having a weekly quiz with her sister and her family on a Saturday night, every Saturday at 6 o'clock. It became quite a thing. And at the end, when the lockdown was being lifted, we were like, should we carry on doing our quiz? Because we actually got quite to enjoy it. So lots of ways you can keep in touch with people, keep those support networks in place, keep the family networks in place, use the technology, be it an online support group or whatever. We've also recently launched our Calm Club, which is, again, another way of getting a sense of relaxation, how to deal with anxiety and stress and looking at positive thinking. So for an annual subscription of only £10, you can book sessions 3 times a week on those 3 topics as often as you want for a whole year. So have a look at our Calm Club initiatives. And what it is, it's a 30-minute relaxation session with one of our hypnotherapists using giving you a light touch introduction to clinical hypnotherapy as well. So there's some other things you can do. And as I said earlier, visit your GP. If none of these self-help tools work, none of these little practical tips work, and you're finding that anxiety is suddenly becoming all-consuming, and it's starting to impact with your normal functioning, and the signs to look for are not being able to do your work, not being able to concentrate during the day, not being able to sleep, losing appetite. I mean, there's lots of physical, psychological, and behavioural symptoms that come with anxiety. And if you want to look at what they are in a little bit more detail, again, visit our website, Anxiety UK, anxietyuk.org.uk. Have a look at the signs and the symptoms. You might want to go and speak to your doctor. There might be, there's lots of different treatment pathways these days. There's lots of different options that you can look at, whether that's therapy, whether that's medication, whether it's a combination of both. Talking to a professional is really important, whether it's your doctor, whether it's talking to us, whether it's talking to a therapist privately. It might be what you need to do to be able to move on to that next phase, get that anxiety under control, and get to the point where you're in control of the anxiety is not in control of you. If you're at that point where you feel the anxiety is in control with you, and that's ruining your life and it's running your life, that's the time to think about getting some professional help and some professional support. So that's a very, very brief run through some tips, some advice. There's lots of other tips. I know you're watching this either live now on our Sing Out Strong YouTube channel, or you're going to watch it again later on YouTube. You can watch it again. We've also got lots of videos, as I mentioned earlier. Emma did one for us early in the pandemic. So if you want to visit our YouTube channel, there's lots of other, about a dozen or so videos there from our therapists talking about dealing with uncertainty, dealing with claustrophobia, lots of different tips and advice there. There's blogs on our website. There's a whole section about dealing with corona anxiety on our website that you can look at. The other thing I want to mention briefly is compassion focused therapy. It's something we launched back in May, and we're the first therapy service nationally in the UK to offer a national service of compassion focused therapy. It's something that's going to become much more prominent, I think, in years to come. But compassion focused therapy is all about being kind to yourself and looking after yourself, being compassionate to yourself. And one thing that's really important through these really difficult times, when we are dealing with some really difficult situations, especially now as lots of areas go back into lockdown and we're going into these winter months, is being kind and compassionate to yourself is really important, not just to others. Put it number one first. Being compassionate to yourself is important. So compassion focused therapy is a way of helping you be kind and compassionate to yourself. So that's a brief run through, some tips and some tools that you can use there, which I hope you found useful. And there's, as I said, lots more information on our website if you need more look at that in a little bit more depth and a bit more detail. Now, I know there is a live chat function facility here. I'm happy to field any questions if there's anybody watching that's got a burning question to ask me. I don't know if I can try and answer them. If there is, if I can see them, I should be able to, looking at this. If there isn't, happy to sort of draw it to a close there. Emma did ask me to do about a 20-minute chat, and I don't want to eat into your getting the tea ready time or any other more pleasant activities you've got planned for the evening. But it doesn't look like we have got any questions. If there isn't anything else, then let's just finish on just a quick recap. Breathing exercises. In, count of 3, hold for 4, blow out through your mouth 5 or 6. So inhale, hold, exhale for longer than your inhale. Do that half a dozen times or more at least, and you'll start to feel calm and relaxed. Distraction techniques, grounding techniques, self-help groups, books, peer support groups, online peer support groups. Talk to your GP, talk to family, friends, keep those networks of support going. Use the technology to your benefit. Stay away from the news if you're getting a bit anxious about what's happening in the world. Try not to spend hours watching the news, because that would just make it seem even worse than it probably already is. So, Judith, thank you. I'm glad somebody's listening. Reassured me. Great. Hopefully that's been useful, as I say, and visit our website, anxietyuk.org.uk, if you want to look at any of those things in more detail. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for your time, everybody, and good luck, and keep using the choir to make sure that it's a good mindfulness activity as well. So good luck with your future plans. Thanks. Take care.